Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC betting show. This week we are going to London as featherweights Lerone Murphy and Movsar Evloev battle in a presumed number one contender fight between undefeated fighters. I love this card top to bottom. I think there's plenty of great betting spots. I went through it. I took a couple underdogs, a couple prop spots, and we're going to be eyeing some parlay pieces to put something together later in the week. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's kick things off by talking about the main event as Movsar Evloev takes on Lerone Murphy in a battle of undefeated featherweights looking to earn the next title shot, which both of them have arguably already earned. But I love a good number one contenders fight, so I'm happy with the matchup. We'll start with Evloev. He's 19-0. I have loved backing him in the past. We took him by decision against Aljo. We took him straight against Arnold Allen. We took him by decision against Dan Ige. I've always really liked Movsar's style, even though he's not a finisher. I think he's a really good wrestler. He's probably one of the best wrestlers we've maybe ever seen at 145 in a division that, doesn't have that many wrestlers. We just saw Andre Fili become the guy with the third most takedowns in the division's history. So not that many great wrestlers in the history of the division, but Movsar Evloev is definitely one of them. I think it was really impressive what he did to another strong grappler in Aljamain Sterling, bullying him on the ground later in that fight. I mean, sure, Aljo got top a little, but it was clear that once Movsar got going, he was in control, and that's why he won that fight. Also taking on tough defensive grappler in Arnold Allen, managing to get him down, do some good transitional work, some good clinch work. And I think his striking's underrated. We saw him clearly outstrike Aljo for the little bit that was on the feet. Hung with Arnold Allen, who we know is a very good striker. He's going to give trouble to even the best strikers in the division like Max Holloway, John Silva. And then the Dan Ige fight was a showcase for his striking. Anyone less durable than Dan Ige at that time would have gone down. So I think he's a bit more well-rounded than he gets credit for. I think the striking's a little underrated, and he is, of course, a top-tier wrestler. The finishing threat is lacking, though. That is pretty undeniable, even though it's been a durable schedule. There weren't finishes before it was a durable schedule. On the other side, Lerone Murphy, very fast, sharp, technical kickboxer, good fast hands, great footwork. On the outside, we saw him manage to evade any of the threat when fighting Josh Emmett, managed to just be faster than a great kickboxer in Edson Barboza over that time, and was able to time Aaron Pico coming in one of these moments of deadly brilliance that he has, like the spinning elbow or the knee against Makwan Amirkhani. I do have some concerns. I don't think he's the best defensive grappler. We saw the aforementioned Makwan Amirkhani give him hell in the first round, although Makwan Amirkhani, arguably the greatest one-round fighter of all time at his peak. If that guy had cardio, he would have been damn near unstoppable. So you can't hold that against him too much. But he did get held down and out-grappled by a guy like Makwan Amirkhani, who's never was at the top of the division. So that's a little concerning. I thought he lost the Gabe Santos fight, but that one, it was a close one. I don't think it was the worst thing, and Gabe Santos poses a lot of issues that Movsar can't. Either way, my pick for this one is going to be Movsar Evloev by decision. I bet it at minus 115. I took 2.3 units on it to win 2. I like backing Movsar in this spot. I like backing him against pretty much anyone in the division against other than Volkanovski. And I'll always take him by decision, especially in this matchup. We've, of course, never seen Murphy finished. We've seen him come back from getting hurt badly against Dan Ige to recover and finish the whole fight. He has good enough grappling that I don't think there's any submission threat, especially from Movsar, who doesn't really submit guys. Outside KO shot. I just think the wrestling is going to control the pace of the fight. When they strike, I do agree that Murphy might have the advantage he would have the advantage in a pure striking matchup. He's probably going to have higher volume, sharper, but I think Movsar is so defensively sound that in the moments where it is on the feet, he can kind of mitigate the damage and make it like, oh, Murphy was, winning on the feet. He was doing a bit more, but then he can stamp the rounds by, getting a takedown and controlling for 2 minutes. So if if it's 3 minutes of close striking or weird exchanges where it's kind of low volume, Murphy's pitter-pattering on the outside and Movsar is occasionally landing a jab or some straights or something, and then Movsar has 2 minutes of control, I think he wins those rounds consistently. And I don't think either guy poses much finishing threat in it. Obviously, we've talked about the moments of brilliance from Murphy, and he could land another perfect knee. He could land a great spinning elbow again. But against a guy as defensively responsible as Movsar, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than it was against Aaron Pico or Makwan Amirkhani, and I mean a lot more difficult. So I really like Movsar in this spot. I like him to get a decision. I'm considering adding him to the parlay as well, but not too sure about that one. I think I'm just going to stick with my decision play here. Next, we will stay in the featherweight division for a bit of a prospect showcase bout here. We got the highly touted Luke Riley out of Liverpool, England, fighting in his home country here against Michael Aswell Jr., a just 25-year-old prospect who's coming off his first UFC win. So we'll start with Luke Riley. He is the prospect. He's the hometown fight. Well, they're both prospect. He's the big blue chip prospect fighting in his hometown, coming off that big debut knockout, bonus winning knockout of Bogdan Grad. Now, with Riley, I'm a lot more hesitant than most, I'll say that. I'm skeptical on his slow starts. I'm skeptical of his grappling. I'm skeptical that he could get out-volumed if someone stays in his face. I think he obviously has tremendous power and tremendous technique. Those two things, and at his age, gives him the ceiling of being a ranked fighter. But I'm just not sure he's there yet. I think he definitely still needs some developmental fights. I think the Grad fight showed that. In the early going, he really struggled with the wrestling and the pressure, but Grad obviously just not defensively responsible, not durable, got caught with that huge left hook. We'd seen him finished on Contender Series by Tom Nolan, so, I wasn't too blown away by him getting the knockout here. I thought his debut was more concerning than impressive. Still a lot of potential, still a sharp technical striker, but I'm not overly blown away. I don't see this kid and go, oh my god, this is a future champion. There's no holes in his game. I think there's a lot to be concerned about here with Luke Riley, a lot to pump the brakes on. Michael Aswell on the other side, he's a fun fighter at just 25. Came in for his short notice debut against Balaji Oki and gave him some trouble up at lightweight. We know Oki's a big, hard-hitting lightweight too. We saw him just last week giving Manuel Souza trouble going to war. Saw him knock down Mason Jones with huge punches. And Oki was landing on this guy. Aswell has a chin, and he's willing to stay in your face and pressure. He's a gritty pressure fighter. He's going to put on fun fights. And he knocked out Lucas Almeida early in his last fight. Almeida had the weird hand injury going on, but still, Aswell did what you should do to someone with a hand injury. It wasn't like, oh, Almeida made it still competitive even though he was hurt. No, Aswell went in there, handled business, took him out. Looked like he should have if he was injured, and if the injury wasn't as bad as it appeared, it did look like he had a pretty messed up hand, then it's even more impressive. So, my pick for this fight, I'm still picking Luke Riley by decision. I think Aswell's just a little too hittable. I think he's going to stay in his face, maybe give him trouble with the volume. I see why the price came down a little bit from plus 250, because I really do think it's possible that Aswell comes out here and just stays in his face and wins the rounds while Luke Riley looks for a perfect shot or just doesn't get his clean combos off. I think if Aswell makes this a really ugly fight, it could be a lot closer than people think. But I am going to pick Riley because I think he's more technical. I think he's going to have the bigger moments. He can land those big, cleaner shots, really have those moments that stick out in the judges' minds. But my bet for this one is going to be the fight to go to decision at minus 115. I took 1.15 units to win one on that. I just think both guys are very durable. This screams like a fight of the night that's going all 3 rounds to me. Aswell is very durable. Like we talked about, he went to decision with Oakley. He's just Oki. He's just 25, so he doesn't have all this weather of the wars. Riley obviously undefeated, so he's never been finished. Very clean striking, very good defensively. Not going to get finished. Doesn't have any chin concerns, anything like that. So I think this one winds up being a really fun striking match where Aswell keeps the pressure on. Riley has the big clean moments, maybe drops him or something to take around. But I do think it goes to decision much more often than not, with the durability of Aswell being the key factor in that play. Next, we got an all-English matchup in London as Michael Venom Page takes on the fast-rising finisher Sam Patterson, in kind of a surprising matchup to a lot of people with how MVP's been doing some of these guys. We'll start with MVP, and he's coming off a win over Jared Cannonier up at middleweight, where he's got a ranking now, beat Shara Bullet up there too, and he beat Kevin Holland in his welterweight debut. So we know what he is. We know he's that technical, tricky kickboxer with the point fighting, hands down, in and out style, great speed, a tricky right hand, limited finishing ability, and solid defensive grappling, but not great. Going into his defensive grappling against Ian Gary, when they were nice and dry and late in the fight, Gary was able to get him down, and the get-up game from MVP looked rough. When Gary was on top of him doing work, it was kind of just survival from MVP. The scrambles to get to the feet weren't really there. That being said, on the feet, he's obviously very clean, very tricky for anyone, any weight class. So I'm taking on a good striker in Shara Bullet, dominate there. He was winning all the exchanges on the feet with Ian Gary, dropped Jared Cannonier, took him out, was able to hurt Kevin Holland. So we know that if this fight's striking, he's probably going to be ahead. Thing is, when we get over to the Sam Patterson side, this is a well-rounded mixed martial artist. You look at Sam Patterson, he's got the 2 straight knockouts, but he had the 2 submissions before that. And the submissions were against lower-level grapplers, sure. But he went through them like a hot knife through butter. Like, he made Johan Linus look like a terrible grappler. He made Kiefer Crosby look like a terrible grappler. So he did what a black belt is supposed to do to those guys. There was no, good moments. Like we're going to talk about later, Mason Jones taking on Jeremy Stevens. That's concerning to me when you're taking on a guy who's that old, coming back into a rule set with grappling, and you're struggling. That's not what happened with Sam Patterson. Sam Patterson went through, and if he was fighting a guy on the level of Jeremy Stevens like he kind of was with Lanus and Kiefer Crosby, he'll walk through them. And his striking obviously evolved. He's got good low kicks, good straights, real power in there. Knocked out Danny Barlow to cash us that plus 200 some odd ticket. And he's coming off the knockout over Trey Waters. As far as my pick for this one, I am taking Sam Patterson. When you're giving me an underdog price on a more well-rounded fighter who is 9 years younger, I'm not going to hesitate very much. I like Sam Patterson as is. I'm pretty high on him. I think in this particular matchup, the grappling advantage is so clear. I think he can definitely replicate what Gary did. I think he's even more a dangerous submission grappler than Gary. Might even have more power than Gary on the feet. He hits pretty hard. I think the low kicks will be available, and I really think it's just going to be a matter of how often can he get Page down. Because MVP has such limited finishing ability, I'm not even overly worried about the chin of Sam Patterson here. This would be the first person MVP's knocked out in the UFC, and he's about to turn 39. He's not getting younger. He's not going to turn back into this explosive prime Bellator MVP that's jumping knees into guys and stuff. This is going to be the MVP that we've seen the last few fights. If not, well, it's probably going to be a worse version with him continuing to age and coming back down in weight here. So in this spot, I like Sam Patterson. I took 2 units on him when he was plus 150. The price has come back up a little bit. You can get it plus 160 even. And I also took 1 unit on Sam Patterson by submission plus 400, as I think that's his clear path. I think once he gets on the ground, it's going to be him hunting in a matter of MVP trying to survive down there rather than getting up. So give me Sam Patterson. Give me Sam Patterson by first round submission. Next, we will go to light heavyweight for one of the, what I will call generously, showcase spots on the card, as Iwo Baraniewski takes on Austen Lane. Now, we'll quickly go over the fighters here. Baraniewski is a 27-year-old out of Poland who has first-round finishes in all his pro wins, coming off that wild scrap with Ibo Aslan where they were just in a bar brawl, and obviously his durability and power came out on top over and the aggressive and pretty durable himself Aslan. It was a great fight. It was a good showing, and he did the same thing on Contender Series. He knocked out Muhammad Ali, not that Muhammad Ali, but knocked out a guy named Muhammad Ali on Contender Series in the first round. So he's showing good power. He's really dangerous. He's really aggressive. And on the other side, Austen Lane comes down in weight. Former NFL player. He's lost 4 of his last 5 inside the distance, up at heavyweight. decent grappling. We saw him grapple a little early against Pinto. We saw him grapple with Robelis de Spain, the infamously horrendous grappler. But his chin, and he did get submitted by Vitor Petrino, so, he's not the best grappler after seeing Petrino unable to take down Stephen Aswell last week. That aged a little poorly. But his chin's a huge concern. He's now cutting down to light heavyweight at 38 years old. As far as picking this matchup goes, I think you can tell where I'm leaning. They're putting Lane in there to get knocked out by Baraniewski and build a prospect, and I'm not going to pick against that. So I'll take Baraniewski to get another first-round knockout here. No bets on this matchup. It seems like everyone kind of knows what's going to happen. But, I will take Baraniewski to get a first-round knockout in this one. Next, we'll talk some middleweights as CLD is back against Roman Dolidze in a fun matchup of Europeans as one looks to push into the rankings and Roman Dolidze looks to get back on track. So we'll start with Dolidze. He's 37. He's coming off that pretty ugly loss to Anthony Hernandez. Although he's proven he can hang around the top of the division, beats some of the lower ranked guys to hold his spot. He has that tricky win over Jack Hermanson. He got the win in the rematch over Marvin Vettori over 5 rounds. He's got solid skills. He's got solid power in his hands and his knees. He's got pretty tricky jiu-jitsu. He can get in the get out of the tough spots. And he's pretty durable. His only finished loss being that most recent loss to Anthony Hernandez, where he just kind of got gassed out because of the pace of Hernandez. And his gas tank has been an issue. He's definitely slowed down later in fights. When he doesn't finish guys, he can struggle to push a pace. Even in the Anthony Smith fight, that was a dreadful pace against another guy who was completely gassed out. So the pace is a concern, but he is relatively durable, relatively dangerous still, even at almost 38 years old. On the other side, Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD. Came into the UFC with a lot of expectations, and it's kind of taken him a while to get it together, but he's gotten it together. You see the last couple wins against Eric Anders and Marco Tullio. He's putting the finishes together. He's really using that athletic, explosive striking. He's always been durable. We saw him go the distance with Gregory Rodriguez, which is not a feat many accomplish. We saw him knock out Bruno Ferreira with one punch last week. Or not last week, 2 weeks ago, but you get the idea. It is not an easy guy to go the distance with. So this is a durable, athletic striker. Got strong grappling, strong defensive grappling too. Gregory Rodriguez couldn't really get him down, get him going, and Gregory Rodriguez is a strong grappler. So I'm not too worried about guys mixing in the ground game on him. And with that, I'm going to comfortably pick Christian Leroy Duncan in the spot. I think the gap in athleticism is massive, especially at this point in their careers. I think they're both pretty durable, although I think Christian Leroy Duncan is more durable at this stage. He's a lot younger, and we're seeing Dolidze's come off a couple beatdowns. So I do favor him from a durability perspective, but I'm going to pick him just to win a decision here. I do think Dolidze is still slightly durable. I think he has to respect the power. I think he's going to be the one piecing him up, having the big moments, though. It's just kind of a showcase spot again for CLD to style here on Roman Dolidze and push his way up into that top 10, start getting these really big and exciting fights for him. Give me CLD by decision. Back down to featherweight for this one, and it's a fun one. I really like this matchup between Curtis Campbell and Danny Silva. These are two young fighters under 30 on the rise who I think are going to stick around, be some mainstays in the UFC for a good couple years. We'll start with Curtis Campbell. He comes in off Contender Series at just 8-0. Although he has more experience than that, he's fought amateur since he was very young. Lifelong martial artist, if you will. He's definitely been doing this since he was a kid. And you see the well-rounded skill set. The cardio is great, the pace, the pressure. It'll get in your face and just keep taking you down. He's sticky on top. He stayed on top of a guy for 5 rounds, a good submission grappler. And we've seen the striking too. He has good low kicks. He finished a guy with calf kicks. Landed the good knees in the clinch to do the damage and get the finish on Contender Series. It's a little wonky at times, but it's definitely effective. He definitely hits pretty hard, and he definitely knows what he's doing. He's not just throwing strikes out there. He has an idea of why he's throwing these strikes, which is important. Danny Silva on the other side. super durable, tough boxer who's coming to the UFC, and I think he's looked pretty good. You know, that Culibao fight was fun. He dropped them early, had a great start, used some of the wrestling later on. Then he took on Lucas Almeida, who I think Lucas Almeida, you know, we talked about him getting knocked out by Aswell earlier, but I think he's decent. He had that good win over Timmy Kwamba where he dropped him a few times. And then obviously his last fight was against what we now know as a monster in Kevin Vachejos, who was in last week's main event, knocking out Josh Emmett in the first round. And he went to decision with him, even having some decent moments in the boxing, landing a takedown of his own late in the first round, talking some trash. So, you know, he showed his durability, his toughness there. Did get outgunned, though, by just one of the best prospects in the sport. As far as my pick for this one, I agree that Campbell should be favored, but when you're giving me plus 200 on Danny Silva now, I'm going to take that. I took him at plus 185 even. The line's gone up to plus 200. I think you got to take those odds here. Danny Silva is not a pushover. This is not an easy debut for a 23-year-old Curtis Campbell. You know, they didn't find him the fights they're finding for these other Contender Series guys. Maybe at the bigger weight classes it's easier. But, you know, I think, like, find him a Cody Brundage. Find him an Antonio Trocoli or something. The guy's just 23. I agree that he's super talented, but jumping into the UFC is tough for anyone. I don't care how good your mindset is. I don't care how long you've been preparing. If you're just 23, it's going to be tough. And it's a huge jump in competition because Danny Silva's no pushover. Danny Silva isn't a Cody Brundage. This isn't, you know, you don't get to dip your toes in the UFC water here and test out how you feel. You're into the fire. Danny Silva's going to make him fight. So I took Danny Silva. I think he has the good enough defensive grappling. He could even, I mean, he uses his grappling offensively. I don't think he'll be able to in this matchup. I don't think there's a chance of that. But I think he has good enough grappling overall that he can force moments on the feet here and use that really sharp boxing, that good reach of his, even though he's at a reach disadvantage here. I think he carries himself longer. He does well with that. To, you know, mix it up, land some big shots in the boxing and do some damage, make this an ugly, really close fight where he could even have the striking advantage and force a striking match. So at these odds, yeah, plus 200, I'm on the Danny Silva side. I think he's good enough that at those odds, you got to back him against a debuting 23-year-old. No matter how high I think Campbell's ceiling is down the road, he is where he's at. He's a 23-year-old. So I think this will be a great experience for him. And if he wins, I'll be super impressed because it's a great win. But at these odds, I had to take some Danny Silva. I think he wins a decision here. It should be a fun fight, though. And this isn't a fade on Curtis Campbell. I want to make that clear. I don't think Curtis Campbell's bad. I think Curtis Campbell's a really good fighter. I just think when you're in your debut and you're just 23, we've seen a lot of these guys have close fights, even with Cody Brundage. Dante Johnson just had a close fight with Cody Brundage. And, you know, Curtis Campbell's levels ahead of Dante Johnson as far as his mixed martial arts development. But Danny Silva is also levels ahead of Cody Brundage. You get what I'm saying? So you're giving me plus 200. I think that's the side. Now to lightweight for an awesome matchup. I love this one. It's Mason Jones versus Axel Sola. Another European versus European matchup. We'll start with Mason Jones. He's always exciting. If you've seen a Mason Jones fight, you're probably a Mason Jones fan. He's coming off that awesome comeback against Balaji Oki. He had the war with Jeremy Stevens in both of their UFC comebacks. He's had a lot of success in Cage Warriors, and even in his first UFC stint, he had some great wars with Mike Davis, with Ludovic Klein, you know. So the guy has shown insane durability. He's got a well-rounded skill set, pretty strong offensive grappling when he decides to use it, and his pressure on the feet. He just throws these big winging hooks, stays in your face. He really uses that durability as a weapon for sure. Taking tons of damage to stay in someone's face, pressure them, and exhaust them. Although he does take a lot of damage, and if you can kind of, you know, manage his pressure with footwork and things, you can definitely outclass Mason Jones. On the other side, Axel Sola comes in unbeaten, 11-0-1. He's a pretty well-rounded fighter with pretty sharp karate-style southpaw striking. He's got a really nice straight left, sharp. He came in for his debut at 170 on short notice against Reese McKee. Stopped him late using some really good body work. Wasn't just the one body shot. Before that, he started wearing that body down early in the third round. It was a really good adjustment from him and got the finish. Also, he's had great grappling, and although he's undefeated, we have seen him really tested. We saw him fight Nassourdini Mavov's older brother, and he got cracked early. I'm actually, even watching it back, I question how that fight wasn't stopped. There was a point where he was on the fence taking damage and seemingly went back down, and normally when someone's taking that damage and takes another knee, you'll see someone step in, but I think it was Mark Goddard let them work, and he worked through it and worked his way back into a draw over 5 rounds in that fight. And in there, you heard he's gone 5 rounds before, so the cardio's there. He's going to be a big lightweight at 6'2". He didn't look outsized at welterweight against a relatively tall welterweight in Rhys McKee. That being said, I'm going to pick him here. I'm going to pick Axel Sola as a slight underdog. I just think he's the cleaner, sharper striker. I think his footwork can help negate the pressure of Jones. I think he's a lot bigger than Jones. I think he can keep him at a distance. Just with the length of his punches, his straight shots I like a lot better than the winging hooks of Mason Jones. And I think he has good enough defensive grappling to kind of make Mason Jones strike. I think Mason Jones definitely has a grappling advantage, but when he feels a little resistance there, he tends to default to the striking. I think Axel Sola is definitely going to give him that little bit of resistance. So I took 2 units on Axel Jones at plus 110 here as a slight underdog. I think it's a pretty even fight, and I took 1 unit on him by decision at plus 225, as I think that's his main path, just with how durable Mason Jones is. I think if he really gets ahead early, he's a smart enough fighter not to blow his load like Belagioki and get finished. I think he'll just pace his way, control him at distance, keep his footwork going, keep moving, and get a decision here. So yeah, give me Axel Sola by decision as another underdog pick on the card. Back at featherweight here for another just awesome all-European matchup. Just said that about Mason Jones, Axel Sola. This one might even be better. You got Nathaniel, the last Kingsman, formerly the Prospect Wood, who's now 32 years old. The Prospect's become a veteran here up at featherweight. He's made a home for himself. He's had some good wins, some wars with guys like Andre Fili. He's coming off that impressive win over top prospect Jose Delgado, who we know how dangerous he is, what a difficult matchup he is, and recovered from that early. He's taking on Losene, the Black Panther, Keita, who debuts in the UFC here. He was supposed to debut against Patricio Pitbull last year, I should say, last fall, but he could not make weight, and Patricio Pitbull did not choose to fight him, which I respect, by the way. Don't reward weight misses. Anyways, onto this fight. Yeah, Nathaniel Wood is a lightning fast striker. We saw him, he was fast at bantamweight. He moved up to featherweight and it translated perfectly. He's got these lightning quick boxing hands, solid wrestling when he mixes it in, too, good low kicks. Problem's been his defense and his chin. He's obviously in great shape because he recovers almost every time. The only guy who really knocked him out was the Magic Man down at 135, John Dodson. But at 145, we did see him get dropped by Fili a couple times. He just gets cracked like square on his chin because his defense really isn't great. But he always comes back. He's a really good minute winner. He came back after getting cracked by Jose Delgado with that crazy spinning elbow. And managed to even win the fight despite how close it was. So we know he's tough, durable, resilient, lightning quick, and now he's got tons of experience. Keita on the other side, like we said, he makes his debut, but there's a lot of hype around this guy for a reason. On the regional scene, he is a walking highlight. You watch some of these knockouts he's gotten, he swings big. He has really dangerous, powerful kickboxing. And he's got good experience outside the UFC, too. He's fought in good organizations against pretty solid opponents. There's a reason they're giving him Nathaniel Wood here. They didn't put him on Contender Series or something. They believe that this guy is ready to contend now at 28. So with that, I'm going to lean Keita here. The odds make it really difficult here. They make it really tempting to go on the Wood side. But I just feel like if you're backing Wood, you're going to see, he's going to get ahead a little. He might look great at the start. And then he'll get dropped once or twice. And the big moments are going to end up winning Keita the fight. Because I just think, sure, Wood could hurt him. I think Keita is a lot more likely to have the big moments. In fact, I'd be kind of surprised if Keita didn't have at least one big moment throughout this fight, either knocking Wood out, as we've seen him drop the bunch. We know he doesn't have a granite chin. He's not immune to being knocked out, or just landing a couple knockdowns, which if that steals 2 rounds, that's enough to steal a decision right there. So with that, I'm leaning Keita. The betting line, I think, might be a little excessive for a guy in his debut against a tough test like Wood. So that gives me a lot of hesitation. I think it's tough to call whether it's a decision or a knockout because of the odd durability, I'll call it, of Nathaniel Wood. So I'm going to take Keita to win a decision here. I'm going to say he just drops Wood a couple times in a pretty competitive striking match and takes the decision. Next, we go to heavyweight for another showcase bout on the card, as I'll call them. We've got Mario Pinto taking on Felipe Franco. Now, we'll start with Pinto. He has been impressive in the UFC. He came in off Contender Series where he got a nice first-round knockout. Then he got a huge highlight right hook, knocking out Austen Lane, sending him to another dimension. And he's coming off a nice second-round finish of Jonata Diniz, the dangerous kickboxer. So he's shown some well-roundedness to his game. He's shown really good patience, kickboxing, technical skill, and power, knocking out Austen Lane. On the other side, we have Felipe Franco. I don't know why they signed this guy. I don't want to be too rude, but we saw him on Contender Series last year. And to be frank, it was one of the worst fights on the season, him versus Freddie Vidal. And he got choked out late in the 3rd round by an out-of-shape high school gym teacher who missed weight. So I don't know how they exactly were looking through. I mean, sure, he has 2 first-round finishes since then over a guy who's 10-7, and his most recent one is a guy who's 1-1, which gave him his 10th win inside the distance. He's never gone the distance. In fact, he doesn't have any wins outside of round 1. The only time he went outside round 1 was when he got submitted by Freddie Vidal. So this is questionable cardio, questionable level of competition, questionable wrestling, questionable striking. Man, I think you guys get where I'm going with this one. It's Mario Pinto by literally whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He can pick the type of punch he's going to knock him out with. He can pick the submission he uses if he wants. I think this is Mario Pinto all day, every day, this week, next month, next year. On to another showcase bout here at middleweight as Antonio Trocoli takes on Mantas Kondratavicius. Sorry, that one's a mouthful for me. We'll start with Mantas. Mantas is a dangerous puncher who we're seeing come off a knockout in just over a minute over Danny Barbier on Contender Series, which was impressive. He has some other first-round knockouts, an armbar too. Did get submitted once in second round in his toughest career fight, although that guy is still undefeated to this day. So that was, his biggest test competition-wise. And that's really the story with this guy, is he's shown a lot of power, a lot of potential. Obviously, he hits hard, but who's he really fought? That's the question that leaves you hesitant with what he's going to become. On the other side, we're still going to be asking who's he fought, even when he wins this fight in the first round, because he's fighting Antonio Trocoli, who's had 3 UFC starts. In the first one, he got turned into a punching bag by Shara Magomedov, and in the last 2, with a year in between, mind you, he got finished by a standing guillotine in just over a minute both times, with a year in between. So clearly wasn't working on his guillotine defense in that time. I'm not really sure what Trocoli... I mean, I know he's a grappler on the regional scene, but you just don't see him really go to implement the takedowns. He doesn't do anything other than be a punching bag and get finished in the UFC at this level. And at 35, I have a hard time believing he's going to get much better. So I think Mantas turns him into a punching bag here, uses that power, gets an early finish. This is just another open shut case to me. I'm not going to overthink this fight. I'm not going to talk myself into Trocoli being value or anything. This is Mantas, first round knockout. That's my pick. No bets. Next up, we'll go to heavyweight here as Louie Sutherland takes on Brando Pericic. This is kind of a tough one to call. Both these guys are pretty inexperienced. We'll start with Sutherland. We'd seen a couple good showings from him on the regional scene where he showed really athletic kicking game. likes those front kicks for a big guy, and he obviously has very hard low kicks, as in the very short time we saw him strike with Walter Walker in his short notice debut, managed to break his leg with a low kick. On the other side, Brando Pericic hasn't really fought anybody. He's coming off a UFC win where he got the knockout in the first round against another guy who hadn't fought anybody, but his last 2 wins before joining the UFC were both against guys with 0-0 records, and the fight before that he fought a guy who was 13-3, and he got choked out. So, I mean, obviously both these guys are big knockout punchers. Obviously they have skill. Pericic is coming off a debut win. Sutherland's coming off a debut loss against a much better opponent. I think this is a pretty even, well-rounded fight. I think we could see either guy really get going here. I'm not really blown away by Pericic yet until he beats someone, with a pulse. And with Sutherland, he's shown some signs of a pulse. And so with that, I'm kind of leaning towards Sutherland here as a sizable underdog. I haven't placed anything down yet. But when you're talking about 2 heavyweights who go for knockouts, I don't really know how you can be confident enough in Pericic to lay a big price when his last 3 fights have gone under 2 minutes and he hasn't fought anyone near this level. Not that Sutherland has proven to be some UFC caliber guy, but he could be. I mean, I don't know why anyone would be so confident that he's not, is my point. So I have a very slight lean to Sutherland on these odds, although I'm not sure I'm going to stay that way. This one could easily flip back and forth for me. I just don't feel like I have a great read on what either of these guys are right now, and with how raw and inexperienced especially Pericic is, I think he could be making big improvements. So give me Sutherland by second round TKO as a very loose pick, but this was the fight I probably had the most trouble with on the card. On to the lightweights as Shem takes on Abdul-Kareem Al-Selwady in this one, as both guys look to bounce back from tough debut losses. So we'll start with Shem. He fought Narulo Aliv in his debut, having shown decent submission skills on the regional scene, and he looked pretty terrible. He looked completely lost on the feet, just getting his head bounced around, no head movement, no real defense, just kind of winging weird strikes through like a jumping high kick at one point. There's just wasn't much thought behind what he was doing on the feet. Hasn't shown great wrestling either. Was controlled on the ground. He obviously has a decent submission game. That's what he does. That's how he gets most of his wins, is by submission. So he's a half-decent grappler. His length gives guys trouble, and he's got a pretty good chin. He ate some good shots from Narulo Aliv in that shot and still made it to decision. On the other side, Al-Selwady is a very active guy, not in terms of physical activity getting into the octagon. We haven't seen him in a long time since his debut loss to like Rajabov. But I mean, when he's in the octagon, he does a lot. He's very side-to-side movement, the bounce around, throws a lot of volume, a lot of big winging overhands. Not the most knockout power, but he can definitely give guys trouble with the movement. It's hard to track him down, and he is throwing such constant volume that it's hard to keep up with his pace if you can't put him on his back or outpower him like Louie Rajabov could. He does have a pretty rough chin. He's been knocked out 4 times, including that loss to Rajabov where he just kind of got grazed and went down. So that is a concern with him. Overall, I'm going to pick Al-Selwady here because I think his biggest concern is his chin, and Shamrock doesn't really have the striking to knock guys out. I'm not overly compelled to back him here. I could get there if it comes down to minus 110 or something. But I think this is a fight where you just stay away from it because Al-Selwady is probably going to look like the clear front runner. I'm going to pick him by decision. I think he wins all the minutes. But I think his chin's so bad that Shamrock could just throw a random straight right down the pipe and catch him. It only takes a moment of brilliance, not even. And Shamrock has a clear durability advantage in this matchup, in my opinion. So I'll lean with Al-Selwady by decision, but not too much confidence there just because I do think Shamrock is so much more durable than him. Next, we'll go to strawweight as we see an exciting prospect debut here. Shanelle Dyer takes on Ravena Oliveira, and we'll start with Dyer as she's coming in off a Contender Series loss, but should tell you something that she got signed off a loss. It was a phenomenal fight, and it wasn't her first time on like a big stage. She's fought in PFL before. So at just 6-1, she actually has decent experience, and she's shown a solid well-roundedness to her game. She's not some underdeveloped, super raw prospect that has never faced a real grappler before. She's shown really good striking. She's taken her licks. She went to war on that Contender Series fight with Foro. So, you know, she's not just going to roll over at the first sign of adversity. On the other side, Ravena Oliveira, pretty aggressive finisher, decent grappler. She's 0-2 in the UFC so far. Most of her wins coming by finish outside of it. 29 years old. Overall, you know, like I said, she's a decent grappler. There's not too much there. And she's coming off a rear naked choke loss late in the third round. And her other loss was to Tainara Lisboa, a couple low-level losses. So I'm going to pick Dyer here. I think she has the advantage wherever the fight goes. I think she can keep it standing. I think she can outstrike her clearly, put the damage and the pace on her. And I think she gets a late stoppage. So I'm going to pick Shanelle Dyer by third round TKO in this one. All right, lastly, let's talk about the first fight of the night here at women's bantamweight as Melissa Mullins takes on Luana Carolina. So with Melissa Mullins, she's had a decent UFC run so far. She's 2-2 with wins over Alex Silva and Segula and losses to Nora Cornell, and a loss in a rematch to Daria Zheleznyakova, where she had beaten her previously on the regional scene in a wild fight. With her ground and pound, she got on top and kind of just went to work from there. Second time around, Zheleznyakova defended the takedowns and looked like the much cleaner striker. On the other side, we've got Luana Carolina, who's kind of a UFC vet right now. You know, a lot of people remember, especially coming back to London, from being the chick who lost by spinning elbow to Molly McCann. Although she also has wins over Lupita Godinez, and going into her last fight, she had a 3-fight win streak before taking on a very tough matchup in Michelle Montague, where she survived to a decision against a tough, undefeated top prospect. So, in this fight, I definitely am picking Carolina. I think she has the ability to defend the grappling or even have some offensive grappling success of her own. I think she's on another level in the striking than Melissa Mullins. So I'll take her to win a decision here, defend the takedowns, piece her up using the striking. Give me Luana Carolina. Alright, well thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC betting show. Quick recap of the bets I have down so far. I have 2.3 units on Movsar Evloev by decision at -115. I have 1.15 units on the fight to go the distance between Luke Riley and Michael Aswell Jr. to win 1 unit. I have 2 units on Sam Patterson straight at +150, 1 unit on him by submission at +400. I have 2 units on Danny Silva at +185, and I have 2 units on Axel Sola +110 with 1 unit on him by decision +225. Other spots I'm considering lightly Al-Selwady and Carolina, although I haven't quite gotten there yet on those. Make sure to follow my Twitter and my Instagram to keep up with the plays that I'm going to post. I'm going to post the parlay of the week later, my favorite underdog, and my favorite prop play of the week. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment telling me what to do better, what you like about the videos, what you don't. I'm always looking for more feedback to improve these videos for you guys. Thank you once again for watching, and I really hope you enjoy the fights this weekend.